This is Beth Messick, chairperson of the Citizens in Opposition to the Fountain Wind Project. The purposes of the group that we have, whether you call it Citizens in Opposition to Fountain Wind or Stop Fountain Wind, our purpose is to stop the project encroaching into our forested and fire hazard area, along with all of the other significant impacts to the environment that this would bring to our eastern Shasta County environment. If you look behind me, you can see the forested area, the ridges, the canyons, and the 50 square miles of the project area. From this site, this person will see virtually all 72 of the turbines that reaches from up by Hatchet Wind, which is visible from this spot, all the way south to John Smith Logging Road. Barely, but not quite visible from Shingletown and the Lassen Peak. Our purpose is to stop industrial wind projects like this from encroaching into forested areas in Shasta County and all of California that are already plagued with fire hazards, whether from campgrounds, power lines. Actually, the insurance industry says that the highest cause of fires in our area is man's encroachment. So we, in our mind, would think that the less you encroach into an environment, the safer it's going to be. But if you look behind me, you can see that it's a very difficult area to fly. The purpose of the Sequa that we are currently participating in is to identify any impacts to our area, significant or less than, and to identify ways of attempting to mitigate those significant impacts, and to be able to relay this information in a transparent fashion to the public and the government agencies that will be making these decisions. By the development of this EIR, DEIR, and shortly the final EIR, is to be able to allow our authorities to make a decision. We need to express our opinion to those authorities so that they can make a decision that holds with how we feel about the project. If you research the studies, you will see that a number of the studies that were done prior to any application to the county, which violates a number of the Sequa rules and regulations about conflict of interest and this having to go through the Sequa process. The original biological studies were done under the auspices of the McLeod Wind Project, I believe was the name, back in about 9 years ago. And that was when the original study was done, and then they have added little tidbits along the project as it was applied for, so on and so forth. But unfortunately, it should in fact invalidate the original study that was done. There has been supposedly a geological study that has been done in regards to the project. Unfortunately, some of their conclusions are so blatantly, obviously wrong that it's almost ludicrous. They claim that there are no landslides in our area, and yet one of their turbines is sitting on an extremely large landslide that happened during the Fountain Fire. There are all sorts of places along here that the roads have signs. Slide area ahead, rock slide area, slow down, slide area, water debris. How they were able to complete a study and come to that conclusion, I don't know. Another part of their study relays that there is corrosive soil in fact in the environment, and yet in the study they talk about putting concrete in the areas where there is corrosive soil. Are we going to put something between the soil and the concrete so that it doesn't break apart? If you look at one of the stockholders' reports from Hatchet Wind, a few years after the Hatchet Wind project went in, they were already having trouble with their concrete bases crumbling, but probably because of the corrosion. But we're not sure exactly why in that area. But when you ignore obvious things and go ahead with what your purpose is with disregard for what you've learned in those studies, you're asking for problems. There are a number of studies. They did a little bit of a water study, but not a complete one. They have done a wind study, which was really in-depth. It was for 10 years, but it wasn't a complete wind study. They didn't study air turbulence. They didn't study the shear factor. They didn't study the wake effect. How these were going to, the placement of these turbines would be done so that they didn't affect each other and or the Hatchet Ridge project that they'll be placed in front of, and obviously is going to be impacting the turbulence of the wind on the hillside. Let's look from a realistic point of view about fire up here. We're classified as one of the highest fire risk areas in the state. We've already had a huge, massive fire that at its time in the early 90s was the largest fire in the state of California. That's why you see a lot of the area that you see behind you, the forest may not be fully grown, because it's trying to recuperate from the massive fire that happened 25 years ago. This is why the forest area, the forest company wants something else to come into the area to boost its income until the trees get big enough to harvest. But look at the complications of the fire and fighting fire in this area. You have ridges. The turbines up at Hatchet are within about 6 miles of here. The closest turbine to here is going to be within probably 1 mile and maybe closer. Those turbines are about 450 feet tall. The turbines they're proposing to put in are going to be 679 feet tall, almost 700 feet tall, and they're going to be massively closer. Okay? Now multiply that times 72 of them across this whole environment. Some of them are going to be a little lower because they're going to be lower down on the ridge. Some of them are going to be a little higher because they're at the top of the ridge. They're not going to be in one straight line. They're going to be zigzagged across the project area so that it's going to be unable for the air pilots, tanker pilots, to come in and battle this kind of fire. We already have talked to a number of tanker pilots that will in fact refuse to fly this area. Whether they're given GPS coordinates or lat-long coordinates, they will not get close to this project area. 20% of the pilot fatalities that are related to fire is because of obstacles. And these are going to be so varied that they're not going to be able to predict, even on a clear day, how close they're going to be able to zig and zag through there, much less if you add the complication of flame and smoke and the obscuring of your vision. Well, okay, so you don't have the air tankers available. What about ground crews? Well, from the ground crews that we have talked to, a number of the battalion chiefs that are responsible for putting their people in the forest have already said that they're not going to place their staff within at least a quarter to a half of a mile of these turbines because of the possibility of debris flying off of a turbine, whether the fire starts at the turbine or not. If that turbine is involved in a fire, they're concerned about debris. And if you consider the throw factor of those blades, if they're spinning at 200 miles an hour at their tip, is within a quarter to a half of a mile or longer. So now, how are you going to address your fire? There already is a lot of water up here from ponds, the Pitt River, that can bring water up there. The dip tanks are great if you've got a small fire that you can control up there right at the beginning. But if you've got a massive rip-roarer, those little dip tanks up there are going to be virtually empty within 2 or 3 trips, unable to be refilled, and because of smoke are going to be obscured from the helicopter's vision. The people that they will have up there, whether during construction or during operation, are the ones that are more likely to be starting a fire than if we just left it alone. The other complication that is not really discussed very much in fire is lightning. This area already draws a tremendous amount of lightning. And these turbines will be drawing even more. As a matter of fact, wind turbines in fact will draw the electrical lightning down to them. So not only do you have the natural lightning that is being formed, but now it's going to be targeted in our proposed project area. So we'll be having an even higher incidence of lightning. A lot of the time it will strike on a turbine. And maybe, in fact, their lightning arrestor will work. But what if it doesn't work? What if it works 90% of the time, but there's 10% chance of it not working? You want to risk that? Okay, then you take a look at the length of time it takes water to get up to these areas on the fire trucks. It takes a fully loaded truck from Round Mountain to get up to the top of the project area is going to take more than an hour. So you have a very added complication of, okay, how are you going to fight this fire? You can't fight it through the air tankers. You can't fight it within certain distances of the turbine via ground. You're going to have a problem. Yes, they say they have fire arresters in the nacelles. But if you go to the companies that sell the fire arrestor products that they purchase for the nacelle, they will tell you that they fail between 10 and 25% of the time. So what does that do? we can hardly get any reliable information because the wind industry, unlike all the other industries, do not have cooperation between the industries themselves. Different companies don't share best practices. Companies don't share the things that they've had problems with. And so, and there's no regulatory authority over wind turbines. So there is no way to really know what is good information and what is not good information. Okay, we're talking about further studies that need or are planned to being done. There has not really been an effective study of the water done by the Army Corps of Engineers. After we mentioned it in one of the Board of Supervisors meetings, in fact, the project did reach out apparently to the Army Corps and are waiting for a response. That study on the water and the situation would be done after the project's approved. The study that will be done with wildlife and fish and game will be done after the project is approved. The fire plan and the engagement of the California Department of Forestry will be done after the project is approved. There are a number of other studies and engagement plans that they say that they will do after they get project approval. Well, then what is the purpose of going through the Sequa to begin with if you're not going to do the studies prior to? Like I mentioned before, the purpose of Sequa is to be able to inform the public and the government agencies to, in fact, be able to make a responsible decision in regards to what, in fact, is happening with the project. Well, if you don't have the permanent turbine sites, which they don't, if you don't have the actual turbines themselves, which they haven't picked out yet, if you don't have your fire plan designed prior to, if you don't have your water covered for your citizens to make sure that their water supplies that they depend upon for life is covered, if you aren't covering the wildlife, the bats and the birds prior to approval, do you want us to just give you a carte blanche approval of the project and let you come in and just do what you want? And if somebody raises an objection to how you're doing something, well, you'll talk to them about it and then see if there's a little something that can be thrown at it to make it a little bit less than significantly impactful. Unfortunately, I don't believe that the powers that be or the people are so ignorant that they would choose to just accept your money. The project actually verbalized a couple of things, one of which was, did you want a tremendous development to our community? No. We are the beginning of the real Northern California. We are the gateway to the mountains and the forests that cover the northern part of the state. We have already seen what fire can do in our area and are trying to the best of our own abilities as single people to bring the ladder up in the forest, to make our properties more green, to make the properties so that the fires can move through here in a safer fashion if they come. But unfortunately, when you have people disregarding the fact that you can use like cogen plants and and you can clean your forest that way. Unfortunately, you just totally miss the fact that fire in this area just makes any development, industrial development in this project, a no-go. It's too dangerous. When you sit, and it may be just one of these things may or may not be important for stopping the project. But when you put together all of the things that we have either included in they have included in the DEIR, or we have included in this video, any of those kinds of things put together is too much. The amount of money that Shasta County will be getting, it's not worth it. They say that during the construction phase, Shasta County will get $3.5 million. Wrong. Shasta County will get roughly a touch over $600,000, because 6% of that 7.25 sales tax is to California. So California will be getting a nice chunk of change. They'll get about $2.8 million, but Shasta County will just get a touch over $600,000. If you look at the $1 million that they were going to give the community, and some of it was give to the tribe, some of it was give to a nonprofit, some of it was, there have been different plans on how to give the community its benefit. At the moment, the plan is that they will develop a project plan for over the next 30 years that is controlled by the Board of Supervisors, that relates to children's activities and something along those lines, because that was what they heard from the few people, local community residents, that would in fact talk to them. So we can in fact create safer forests if we follow the county's lead on biomass. There is a great need to protect and clean our forests, and you can actually create power that way, and it's a totally different way of offsetting the carbon than disturbing this perfect set of sequestering carbon that we already have. If you take a look, I believe it's under Executive Summary number 8, under the DEIR. They ask for the best environmental alternative to this project. You know what the response is? The best alternative is a no project vote, because anything else brings in either significant impact or enough impact that cumulatively it becomes significant. So in closing, for me, I would request a few things from you. Number one, I would request that you visit our Stop Fountain Wind webpage. You may have found this video there, but you may have found it elsewhere. Please check out the website, and it will give you lots of pertinent information. Secondly, I would request that you comment to your Board of Supervisors in your area, or attend, virtually or otherwise, Board of Supervisors meetings and express your opposition to this project. You do not have to live in this project area. You could be over in Modi's district. You could be over in Patrick Henry Jones's district. But get a hold of them and let them know how you feel. And last but not least is, please attend the public hearings that will be coming up after they have issued the final EIR, which we're anticipating somewhere between January and March. We will expect the public hearings to be a month or so after that. If you want, just check the Stop Fountain Wind webpage and we'll keep you posted on when you need to show up with bells on.